Hey, I'm Mel.
Hey, I'm Mol.
Hey, I'm Andy.
Hey, I'm Israr.
Welcome to the Podyssey.
With the GlioBabes.
2 girls.
2 brain tumours.
And 2 volunteers.
One of them's me.
What could possibly go wrong?
Let's find out.
So, in today's episode, this is a little bit different. We have 4 people in the studio. Usually it's either 2, sometimes it's 3, but today we have 4, so this is going to be an interesting episode. Today we are joined by Andy and Israr, who are big names within the brain tumour community. So if you guys could introduce yourselves and, tell us a bit more about yourselves, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I'm Andy. I had a grade 2 meningioma 8 years ago now, surgically removed, with some radiotherapy treated about 3 years ago. So I've got two of the ticks in the box. I do a lot of volunteering, effectively for Brain Tumour Charity, Brains Trust, and for Radiotherapy UK. So I just try and do whatever I can to spread the word and effectively help others who are going through the same kind of, I won't swear, rubbish journey that I've been through.
I'm Isra. So I had a large brain tumour removed approaching 3 years now. So in a couple of weeks, it'll be 3 years. And since having the operation, I'm trying to do as much as I can to raise awareness for it and to help myself as well to stop the survivor's guilt. So here I am with 2 amazing people. 3 amazing people.
Thanks.
That's very, very sweet. We are so excited to try this. We've said off camera and we'll be transparent on camera. This is so trial and error. How this is going to work with 4 people. And we have some big personalities on this screen, all of us. So this could be phenomenal. It could be groundbreaking. It could be a mess. But actually, we love messy things because brain tumours are anything but perfect. So it works. So 4 people, 4 brain tumours. Let's chat about it. And something that we want to start on, we want to start on a good note before we go really, really deep in true GlioBabes fashion. Something you both do, the tumour, if you'd like to call it, is a huge part, I think, of what all 4 of us do. And it can be quite a powerful tool. And it's not quite something that we talk about as much. We talk about kind of like the survivor's guilt a bit, which we'll go on to talk about, and other coping mechanisms. But sometimes the deep, dark humour is something that's got a little bit of shame attached to it. But I think it can be really, really important. And if it leaves you smiling and leaves you laughing, then that's good. So why do you think we all do that? That's a weird question to ask you, but where do we think this humour came from? Why do you think we do it? And tell us some of your best humour.
I think for me, it's because with any major illness, when you're told you have a brain tumour or your loved one has a brain tumour, it's a dark, scary place. And you're scared yourself, you're scared for your family, you're scared what might happen. And in that deep, dark place, without humour, sometimes it can appear or feel very lonely, that you're on your own, that I shouldn't be joking about this, I should be really serious. Is this the end of my life as I know it? And I think that's why humour is, for me anyway, and for a lot of it, really important, because it just takes some of the scariness away. So by kind of joking about something, you're confronting it, you're acknowledging it, but you're also saying, hang on, I'm not going to be beaten by this necessarily. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to carry on being who I was. And part of that is the tumour, because everyone's got a sense of humour. Some are weirder than others. Thank you. But I think it's important. So I think the other thing as well for me is that when I think of my brain tumour, I don't want to just think about horrible, nasty things. I don't want to be thinking about the treatment, about the recovery, about the ongoing challenges. Sometimes it's nice to look back and smile. And some of the things I heard and did, certainly in the early days, the humour side, means that when I look back on those times, sometimes it actually makes me smile, and you realise it's not quite such a big, dark, scary place. So a couple of examples for me was, we joked before my surgery. I had about 6 weeks between diagnosis and surgery because mine was quite large, 7 centimetres, so I had to come straight out. And we kind of joked about, when people go into a coma, and they sometimes come out and they can like speak a different language, or they've learned a skill magically. So we used to joke about, after my surgery, wouldn't it be funny if I came out speaking Chinese? And at the time, my kids were 17, 20 and 21. So they knew what I was like. So we joked about this. So after my surgery, amazingly able to text, the very first text I sent was to my 3 kids, and it was a load of Chinese. Nothing about, hi, I'm here, I've survived. It was just a load of Chinese. And they said that's the best text they'd ever received, because I was alive, but also it meant that as far as they were concerned, I was still me. And one of the big concerns about going into surgery and coming out is, will you be different? So they absolutely loved that. And that straight away they knew. And also they knew that I was comfortable kind of joking about my humour. Ever since then, it's been less taboo, less scary. It's been something we can joke about. So, my kids always say, oh, Dad, we always thought you only had half a brain. And I thought, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I said, I look on it more as built-in redundancy. But yeah, I only had half a brain because there's a lot of space. So, and things like they got one of their first T-shirts they got me was, it had, I've been through brain surgery and all I get is this lousy T-shirt, which I wore proudly on holiday. And they got a few reactions, but they quite like that. And I've got another T-shirt that says, a bit like, when you go to the London Underground or on the train, it says mind the gap. So I've got a T-shirt with a sort of London Underground emblem saying "Mind the gap," because 7 centimeters gone, there's a lot of gap left, and it's just it's things like that you just. And the one last one, which always makes you smile, was I had a friend who literally the day after surgery, I said, I've just said it's been, and he said, "Oh, is there anything you can't do now?" So I said, "Well, I spoke to the consultant. They said, well, you can play sport, do whatever you want, avoid contact sport, and don't head the ball." And my friend, quick as a flash, he said, "Oh, just like the Arsenal defence." And it's things like that even though I'm smiling looking back, allow you to kind of maybe demystify it and take some of the scariness away from it. So I think that's why I use humour quite a lot, or my family does use humour quite a lot to just to sort of just make us feel a bit more comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, Andy, I completely agree, actually. I think humour is something that you can do with your family and, your close friends, but because it's such a sensitive thing and it's such a huge thing and people don't know really how to, respond to you when you tell them you've had a brain tumour or, I think it's the other people that find it a bit difficult, and for them who would normally be quite jokey, resist being themselves, the jokey self, because they don't want, because, it is a sensitive thing. So for me, actually, the humour came quite a bit later on. I didn't really see the funny side of, the way I looked after I came out of surgery. I didn't even realize, it was after weeks that I realized that my eye was actually clamped shut, and I didn't even know that. They wouldn't show me any mirrors, for instance. So, and nobody told me. So the humour bit came a bit later, actually, when I realised, I didn't realise, I knew I was doing these things. So once I learned to, gradually walk and also start eating and swallowing, this side of my face, and maybe from all of you actually, like part of your face is numb for quite a while. I couldn't feel my tongue or anything. So eating was a real challenge. And I would, try and like focus. And because of my double vision at the time as well, trying to get something in my mouth on my own was a real challenge. And I was determined to do it myself. And so I didn't go out to eat or, have friends round and I was eating. I would avoid that. But with my family, I sort of practice. So most of it would end up all over my face. But this one time, I just remember we were having spaghetti bolognese. And as you can imagine, it's messy anyway.
That's brave. Yeah.
Yeah. I sort of, the challenge was to get it in my mouth, but it ended up going all over my chin and in my hair and all over. And we've got this large mirror downstairs, and I just happened to look at it, and I just looked like, a little toddler, when you get toddlers and they've got all the food or chocolate all over their face. And normally, actually, that would have really upset me, but something shifted and I just burst out laughing. And I think from that moment on, I just, thought I saw the funny side of things that I couldn't do. And yeah, so that's when I started seeing things a little bit differently, and things did really shift. And so now I don't really take many things very seriously at all now. So yeah, I think I'm still sort of learning the humour.
It's difficult, isn't it? And, like you've said before, sometimes you've been friends with people before your diagnosis that have a really good sense of humour, and then they kind of then shy away from that and don't really know how to respond. But we've touched on in previous episodes as well how we feel like the friends that we had before are now completely different post-diagnosis, post-surgery, things like that. But what we also would like to touch upon today, which Israr you've mentioned very briefly, is survivor's guilt. So, do you ever feel survivor's guilt, and how do you deal with it? Because that's a lot to take on, and we're in a community where unfortunately we do lose friends and we do lose people because of this terrible disease. But as survivors, the four of us sat here today, we do feel guilty, and I know I'm saying that for myself, but looking at your faces now, I can see that you completely agree. So do you ever feel it, and if so, how do you deal with that?
It's funny, I don't think I realised for a few years that I had survivor's guilt, because I was too busy just surviving, if that makes sense, and getting better and getting used to the new me, and not beating myself up for not doing what I couldn't do before, but kind of trying to celebrate what I could do now. So I always think of myself as Andy Mark II, not Andy Mark I, who can't do that. I'm Andy Mark II that can do this. But then it kind of struck me. I went to I think it was son-in-law's wedding, and when you sat in the wedding reception and there's like tables of about 10 people, and I was thinking statistically, on the day I was diagnosed, if I was sat at the same table with 9 people, I'd be the only one left now. And I'm like, whoa, that's when it kind of struck me, this, how come you're here sort of thing. So it is, you sometimes think, why me? Why me did I get a brain tumor, but also why me, why am I still here? So I think for me, what I've tried to do, and I think I was doing it subliminally, but now I realise I'm doing it more sort of overtly, is channel that survivor's guilt. So I try and think of myself now as the voice for the 8 people sat around that imaginary table who aren't here anymore, and I'm the only one here. And I'm thinking, if I can be a voice for them, whether that's helping others, advocating for better finance or better treatment, or providing more information for people through podcasts and other means, if I can be a voice for those people, that makes me feel more or less guilty about being the one left surviving, if that makes sense. I mean, I've been interested to know whether you guys have actually. I've never had any counselling since what I've been through. Looking back, I think I probably might have benefited from it at the time to tease out things like survivor's guilt, because you kind of have to, I don't know what you guys like, I've had to kind of find out as I go along that's why I think I'm driven so much on the volunteering front, because I'm the voice for the people that aren't here. So if I can do that on their behalf, it makes me feel kind of less guilty about the fact that why am I still here and they're not?
Yeah, I completely, again, it's interesting how we all go through very similar emotions and feelings, etc. So I felt tremendous amount of survivor's guilt for a really long time, actually, because first of all, I was given 7 months to live, and then they said after the operation, they'd warned us that I probably wouldn't be able to walk and I wouldn't be able to move my head, etc. So this room that I'm in at the moment, this was going to be my living headquarters kind of thing. We were going to convert this to a downstairs room for me so that I didn't have to go upstairs. But after the operation, something happened. I don't know. Worked really, really hard, and my surgeons, they say I really am a walking miracle, because they just didn't expect me to be where I am today. But then I also think, why me? Why have I made it through? And why have I recovered when, even when I was in the hospital after about a month, someone who had had a similar operation to me, there were two people actually who had passed away, and you think, why am I still here and they're not? But luckily, Andy, I did have counselling. And I was very reluctant actually to have counselling, and someone recommended it to me, and they said, because they said, no, just talk to them. And I did. And I spoke about my survivor's guilt, and they said I needed to look at it differently. I feel like now I've got a purpose, not to feel shame in feeling guilty about surviving, but to channel that into something, helpful, give people hope that you might have had life-changing operations, etc., but actually there is hope, and it doesn't matter what news you get or what they tell you yourself, there is a possibility that things can change, and just being an advocate and demonstrating to people, like we are all here doing amazing things, and that's helping someone. So for me to get over the survivor's guilt was knowing that I was I'm helping someone.
The word hope for me is one of the most, if not the most important words. It's the better four-letter word, because when I was first diagnosed, and then the 6 weeks before I was treated, you were cast into this whole new world of brain tumours with big long medical words and things like that, and you're thinking, what do I do? Where do I go? And it wasn't until I was told about 4 days in, there's some charities you might want to look at. Which I did, sort of, looked at some of the charities, and I thought, okay. And a couple of them had closed Facebook groups where people talk about their issues. And I went into those, and that's the first time I had hope, because I was reading some of the things people were saying about, and they were like, they'd had their operation 10 years ago. And I thought, wow, can I, because at the time I was just assumed, how long have you got? We're talking months sort of thing. So it's that hope was massive. So all of a sudden it's like, there could be a life after what I'm going through. And that hope is so important. So if part of the getting over the survivor's guilt or coping with it is to try and give other people going through the same situation, and we're all different, I know, we're all unique, but just give them hope that for the majority of people, there is hope that they can still go on and do things and make a difference, and they can still be part of a loving family and still have friends and that. And that hope, I think, is something that is really important too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that you had heard about the charities. I don't know, but I wasn't even told about the charities. I found out about the charities probably about 15 months later.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's interesting how information, depending on where you live, what sort of information is given to you by the team.
I guess I was lucky where I was treated. There was, in the hospital, there was a Macmillan sort of office, if that makes sense. So one of the Macmillan people took it upon themselves to go around and talk to anyone who came in with a brain injury. So I'd been in about 3 or 4 days in this, because you don't get anything from the NHS, bless them. And she came round and she says, have you heard about these charities? And it was like, oh, right, great. So I guess I was lucky because of that I was onto them fairly quickly. Not having to wait. I don't know if I'd have had to wait 18 months on my own, that would have just been an absolute nightmare, to be honest. So, that's part of the reason I think what we do and what I do is raise awareness of what we do. So I'm on X, or what was Twitter. And I probably shouldn't give him my name, because you might go and have a look at it and see all the rubbish stuff I put up. But my username is meningioma host. And the reason for that is to just, demystify it a bit. But also, if anyone goes on to that platform and goes something with a ninja, they can kind of find me. And I do probably once or twice a week get people messaging saying, I've just been diagnosed, or a friend has, or whatever. What's likely to happen? And you can just short circuit and say, right, have you talked? There's charities out there that give you lots of support, that gives you this, gives you that. Here's some information that you want to go and look at that. Don't Google anything. And I think that that's also important. So it's not just the hope, but it's also to give them more information. And again, coming back to the original question, I think that helps deal with the survivor's guilt, because for every person you help, you think that's someone else that's not having to go through the rubbish that we necessarily went through at the start when you don't know what the heck is going on.
Yeah, we've spoken about this a lot, and we've touched upon how Mel and I have looked very different. So if people don't know, I live in Wales. I've not mentioned it before.
Here we go again.
And Mel is in the Wirral, but people just say Liverpool. And our care looks so very different from a charity perspective. I've always proudly said that it was thanks to the Nuttles and Laura Nuttall that I knew about the brain tumour charity, and then that snowballed onto everything else. But that was about 5 years after I actually needed the help. So, well, I still needed the help, but it got to a much worse place of needing more developed help than a charity could give because of all of that time, because you just don't, there is zero here. So it's very important that we're having these conversations, as you're right. But I completely understand where you're both coming from with this whole, right, well, we've got all this fear. And someone said to me, a nurse said to me once, that fear is adrenaline and you can choose where that adrenaline goes. So now with whatever I do, I'm always like, right, I'm scared, but actually I'm not going to see it as fear. I'm going to see it as a ball of energy inside me. Where do I want that ball of energy to go? And it's really hard to redirect. But I think with time and with practice, it kind of like you can start being able to do it. And I feel like that's why all of us are traveling around the country, getting into London for these events, braving the underground to get to the Twilight Walk and the London Marathon, and fundraising and doing these challenges and having difficult conversations like today. Because even with the human thing, I think when we asked that question, listeners may have thought, oh, you know, this is going to be funny, but actually that got really deep, because there is a deep meaning behind all of this. Yeah. So thinking there of kind of like hope and that side of everything you've got. And I love that word, because I feel like it's the one thing people can't take away from us. It's something that we have our hands on. And I always talk about in almost every episode, control, and how there's such a negative thing around it. But actually, when you feel like you've got one thing that you as a human that is yours that you can do, that can be really beneficial for a lot of people, and is a bit more of a stigmatized discussion. And looking at it as more than survival, because all of us are doing that. We're doing these things. Being on this podcast today, this is more than borderline surviving. This comes into living. So can you tell us what are some of the things that make you feel like you're living? It doesn't matter how big or small they are. But yeah, what makes you feel like you're living after your diagnosis?
Again, for me, it's a couple of things really. One is the family. So again, my kids are, I should know, they should know. So they're now, I think, 25, 28 and 30-ish. And seeing them grow up and develop and become the people they're being, to me, is living. It's being here to see that as well. So you have to survive to do that. But that's when I feel alive. When I'm with them, I don't think about brain tumor. I don't think about fatigue, tinnitus, all that. I'm just in their world. So, for example, once a year, we still go to Thorpe Park, which is the biggest theme park in London. And they have this thing called Fright Night near Halloween where you go along. So you can go on all the rides. And you also go through mazes where live actors come out and scare you and everything. And I love it, because when I'm having that whatever scared out of me, I'm not thinking about a brain tumor. I'm not thinking about surviving. You come off those rides, and I probably shouldn't go on the rides because it does do your head quite a lot. But I kind of get thinking, I'm going on. So things like Saw and Stealth and Swarm and all those nemesis, you just go on them, and I come off buzzing. I feel so alive, if that makes sense. Sounds like a song, doesn't it? So that's one thing for me that really makes me feel, just gives me that energy and that feeling of more than surviving. I think the other thing as well is some of the charity work. So one of the charities I've had the pleasure, I think you guys have as well, but of going up to Westminster in London and talking to MPs and Lords. And you're in a room you know, when you got the health secretary walking in, you've got lords, you've got all these people you've seen, and they're coming in to hear your story and talk about the challenges of surviving and thriving when you've had a life-threatening illness, cancer or a brain tumor. And wow, what a buzz. So it's hard work, and you guys do this a lot, which is hats off to you. It's scary as you know what, because that also reminds me how good a laxative speaking in public is, if I'm allowed to say that. But when you're talking, and one of the sessions I did last year was talking to a room in Westminster full of Lords and MPs, and one of the MPs stood up and talked. Then this person who produced this report, and then I stood up. I'm like, I kind of wish my mum and dad were still here to have seen it, because my mum especially would have just been all over that, would have loved it. But I just felt so alive. It was scary. It was one of those things you do. You think, I'm going to remember this to the day I die. And it was just, and we don't necessarily volunteer for the buzz and all that kind of stuff. But when you get it, wow, it's fantastic. Yeah. So those sorts of things where, and also, I mentioned the Twilight Walk recently. What a day that is, or an evening that is, where you're surrounded by people who, despite everything, are still just brilliant people, inspirational people. No one's sitting in the corner moping or moaning or whatever. They're all getting on with life. And I remember meeting you guys the first time, and it was like, whoa, starstruck. Met the GlioBabes, wow. And then the next minute, Michelle Afif, the chief exec of brain tumor charities over there, and we're having a picture hugging. It's like, well, hang on, this isn't. But so it's things like that as well, which for me make it feel like I'm sort of living rather than just surviving.
Oh, amazing. You've done some really amazing things. All of you have. Yeah, for me, let me just remind myself what the question was: living and not surviving. I think it's, you can go through each day and just, do things automatically because you have to. And I don't know whether you still have some of the challenges. So the minute I wake up, I'm still, until I've had my meds, etc., I'm still kind of, reminded about what I can and cannot do. And then as the meds, kick in and my head stops vibrating, etc., I sort of think, right, okay, this is not just about survival, but living. And so I've made a conscious effort. For me, the physical things came quite quickly. It took a while, but it's still quick, but it's my small kind of finer things that I'm still working on. So my fine, like motor skills, etc., concentrating. I recently put a post up where I've only recently, actually, I haven't been able to pour liquid into a glass, for instance, because of my vision. And I don't know, I just can't seem, and I've developed, tactics on how to do that. So that was the first time I was able to pour the majority of the drink in the glass without it spilling. So that was, massive, big deal. So for me, it's like the smaller day-to-day things. And also one of the things that I do every single day is I get in contact with one friend just by either sending a text or a phone call, and for me that's really important, because just reminding myself that I do have friends and family that I love and care for, and for them to know that I'm here. A lot of them do feel that they don't know what to say to me, but I like to be the first to send them a message, and that kind of makes me feel like I'm not just surviving, I'm living. And of course, having, my family, they're the biggest sort of motivator, but also doing things for the brain tumor community. I suppose it's all about having a purpose, isn't it? Sort of redefining what your purpose is.
That's a really good point about connecting with people. I mean, I'm lucky to live with my wife, who is fantastic, by the way, and she hasn't told me to say that, so I'm hopefully brownie points. But no, she is fantastic. She treats me as normal, but also she understands kind of what I'm going through. So which is a fine balance, which is brilliant. But also, like I say, connecting either online or in person with other people, because we are humans, we like to be connected. And I think that what Isra says is a really good point. So it might be part of the reason why we do stuff like this and do stuff online as well when we can't physically talk to people, is just to get that connection, to remind yourself you're still human, you're still part of a big tribe, and that you are able to contribute, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the thing, isn't it? And I think no matter how big or small these like little wins are, where it makes us feel like we're living and not just surviving, are so important. Like before I was diagnosed, for a few months before it, I was working like 6-7 days a week, and I was just, it was monotonous, and I was going to work, coming home, going to work, coming home, and I wasn't living. And I think more than anything, since I've had this diagnosis and been through this surgery, it's taught me how to live. And I know it's weird to put it into perspectives like that, but it's taught me that no matter what happens, there's no better time than the present to do something. We know life is too short, and, treating myself to a nice new pair of shoes or like a new top or something makes me feel like I'm living, because that's a small win. Or maybe, I don't know, the triathlon I done last year, that's a massive win. Like I never ran a day of my life before my diagnosis, so to then complete and finish a triathlon was just a massive win for me. So that really made me feel like I was winning. But yeah, I guess everyone's different. What about you, Mol?
I think for a very long time, it didn't matter what I did. And I've been campaigning for a while outside the brain tumor charity. I was 16 when I started my Love Your Period campaign. It was all inspired by my diagnosis and all the hormonal effects that I had from that, and how much stigma and shame, but also a lack of help and understanding and even belief there was around it. Because I really had to fight to be heard, and now kind of live with not impacts that a brain tumor have caused me, but impacts that medical professionals and people didn't believe me for so long, that now those things are irreversible, and those are the things that affect me most. I was coming at it from that angle, but it didn't matter how much I was doing. Nothing felt like a win. Nothing felt like a positive. And I think joining a community where you're kind of like understood and feel like a person, I found that very difficult to understand why I felt the way that I did and put a word to how I was feeling when I started getting into volunteer spaces. But now I realize that was because I was feeling human again, and I hadn't for so long. But yeah, that Twilight Walk day was a massive flick of the switch for me. Like, obviously we started the GlioBabes in January. We'd been part of the Young Ambassador program since April 2024, I believe. And even throughout that year, it was still very, I'm not sure. January was a big, right, okay, I've found my first friend that gets it, and first friend that kind of like sees me as a human. And I'm not worried I'm going to walk into a room and think that they're going to think I look like a walking brain tumor, although Mel and I make that joke all the time. But I kind of know that Mel sees me as a person before a brain tumor, whereas even if other people don't, it was like, oh, well, they definitely do. What do you mean? No, they're just saying that they don't, but they definitely do. But yeah, that Twilight Walk was a massive mindset switch for me. And I was crying half the day, wasn't I, Mel, if not more, because I just, and I said in the last episode, Dr. Michelle Afif was talking to me at one point, and she was like, I'm sorry if I upset you. And I was like, no, I just can't stop crying. Keep going. You haven't upset me. I just can't.
I thought you were crying because you were so pleased to see me.
Obviously, yeah. It was the love and the emotion and I think it was just, yeah, now I can identify those wins. So whether it's small things like doing this podcast, I can talk for Britain, but I can't talk about my feelings. And this podcast has changed that massively. So I communicate with my mum through these podcasts because I find it too awkward to talk to her, but I can tell the world. So it's brilliant. Hi, Mum, if you're listening. So those little wins that maybe weren't quite identified before, but the basic survival rate, I think, should be seen as a win for any of us in this situation. I've not had brain surgery or anything like that. And so coming at this perspective, but hearing from Mel and listening to Mel, and now hearing your stories and following you both online for so long, and seeing how things add up, I think those basic survival things like getting up out of getting up out of bed.
Are you loafing around?
Sorry. Loafing around. Oh, dad jokes have started. Here we go.
Hey,
this is what we came for.
Brushing your teeth, getting to an appointment, getting to a hospital appointment, let alone the mental barriers, just like the physical thing of it. Getting to London for some of these events and traveling around London. I had to go with the Brain Tumour charity about 2 weeks ago for this Future Leaders Researchers event. And I was there the night before for an evening. One tube to go on one stop. You bet I was crying about it, wasn't I, Mel? I was like, Mel, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't get from Paddington to the place I needed to be. And the building was right outside the thing as well. It was nothing. And I still managed to cry about it. But we did it. I think it's those small wins that I probably didn't recognize before that I do now. So I completely took the question out of context there, as per usual. But I think it's important to bring up, because as we've identified on the GlioBabes, sometimes we say these things and people comment and respond and go, oh my gosh, I felt like that and I've never said it. Or I didn't know, I thought I was wrong for feeling that way. So it's important to acknowledge, I think.
No, it is. And I think if anyone ever, I'm sure same for you guys, ever wants to know about what it's like to have brain surgery, and I don't mean the actual surgery itself, because I was asleep. So as my daughter said, it's easy for you, Dad, because you're asleep. Yeah, fair point. But about brain surgery and radiotherapy as well, I'm sure I'm more than happy to talk about it, because it is understanding the challenges as well, but also understanding what you're going through. And then you realise, I still do get scared about having MRIs because it's enclosed. And I used to think, why am I being such a wuss for getting scared about MRIs? But then you talk to people and you realise it's very common. And you learn techniques for dealing with them, so that it takes the scaredness away. But by talking about it, like Molly was saying, by sharing that with others, you realise you're not the only one, and you shouldn't beat yourself up. So what am I doing this one? Am I doing that? Actually, it's very common and typical. So the more we can talk about it, share about it, and talk about how small wins might seem really small, but they're massive in our world, then the more we can do that, the better.
Kind of off the back of that, Andy, you say other people you speak to are scared of like MRIs and things like that. And, I hate MRIs. I've never been in hospital before I was diagnosed. I've never broke a bone. Like, I was relatively healthy before, but now it's constant, every couple of months, it's like eye tests, ear tests, MRIs, blood tests, and it's never ending. And, some people always say, oh, you're so brave, or you're so inspirational. And, we touch upon this quite a lot in the podcast, but, let's have an open discussion about like the word brave and the word inspirational, because I myself don't like them. And I think the reason why I don't like them is because I don't have a choice. I'm not choosing to be inspirational. I'm not choosing to be brave. I am just getting on with it as best as I can. Like, I don't think, oh, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to be really brave. I just do it because I know I have to, and I don't have a choice over that. Yeah, how do you guys feel about those?
I'm exactly the same. Warrior is another word I don't like. Oh, you're a warrior, you're a trooper, or you're so brave. Because I feel exactly the same. For me, bravery implies you're choosing to do something which you or other people would think is brave. I guess we're lucky I'm lucky that I've got a choice. When I wake up, I can almost choose to be positive, and I can choose to attack the day, and I can choose to get up and not moan about things or feel sorry for myself. I know that depression and other mental illnesses, people maybe don't have that choice. So I'm conscious that this is for me, but I don't think it's brave. I get up because I have to get up. I want to live my life. I want to prove to my kids that they can take on adversity and come out the other end. I want to help others. I want to do everything I can possible to just make the best of the time I've got here, because I am here. I don't see that as being brave. So when I'm sat in the corner, when the fatigue really does kick in and the headache's there and the flashing lights, the tinnitus, and you feel rubbish, that's not being brave dealing with that. That's because I kind of have to.
Mm.
So I think, and the same for being a warrior. I've heard that term used. Like, oh, you're a warrior because you survived. Well, what am I supposed to do otherwise? Just not survive? So I think words like brave. I guess there's a bravery in the sense of you can choose to look adversity in the face and try and be positive and make something out of that adversity.
Mm.
That's kind of brave. But just when people say, "Oh, you're so brave, you've had a brain tumor and you're still able to do this," I was like, "No, I'm not. You'd be doing exactly the same in my position. I don't see it as being brave. I just see it as what I need to do to get through each day."
Yeah. Yeah. I think people don't know what to say. You know, they're in admiration about the way and how you've coped with your circumstances, because a lot of people in our situation, we don't, you know, we hide behind closed doors. We're dealing with all the horrible things, you know, crying, not being able to, I don't know, get dressed or whatever it is, make a cup of tea or whatever, you know. But when we're outside, people see us smiling, because that's how I cope with things, you know, when I'm outside, I don't want people to feel sorry for me, or I don't, you know, it's quite, if you, I always, you know, think, yeah, people are sick and tired of hearing about, yeah, you know, me and my brain tumor. So I try not to talk about it, actually. Now I try and sort of be as normal as possible. But yes, I get that all the time, and I think I just, you know, accept it, that that's the way they want to describe you, because they don't know how else to, or what else to say to you. But yeah, it's survival, isn't it? How you cope with your day-to-day challenges, and you have a choice. You either meet it head on or you don't, or you display how you feel publicly or you don't. And certainly, you know, the type of people that we probably are very similar in that in public we do come across as, you know, being very strong and with it. And so, what was the word? Brave. Was it brave? Did you say? Yeah. Yeah. So we do come across, you know, with this bravado that we have tackled it. We've achieved these things, you know, we can walk, we can run, we can do all these, you know, amazing talks and, you know, help the community. But what they don't see is the other side, and how we cope with it, our, you know, fatigue, feeling ill. For about 3 weeks, I was so ill, you know, and but people didn't see that. And then, like, the next post people see is me doing like another challenge, and they kind of, you know, that's what they see.
Yeah, I get that quite a lot as well, where people people always tell me I look fine, which I prefer to look fine than not fine, but you sort of have to remind them. Sometimes it's funny when you're chatting to people in the street, or just like you meet them and you say, "I'm fine, yeah. How are you? I'm fine." Off you go. Some say, "How are you? I'm fine." No, how are you? And they really want to know. And then you explain about the fact that outside I'm looking fine, but inside there's a raging effing war going on that's continual and non-stop and attacking you all the time. But when you're out, like you say, Isra, you kind of put on that mask, almost that persona, and that's kind of life. And I think that's part of it. We're almost like dual. A lot of people like us, we're dual, so they're at home on the quiet days, on the recovery days, I call them, when you really can't do anything. Then it's just then surviving is a bit more, you know, just that's all you can do. When you have the days when you can be up and you can be out and you can be positive, that's when people say, "Oh, you look fine," or "You're brave," and "You're so on and so forth." I say, "Well, no, I'm again, maybe we're lucky that we can manage ourselves so that we'll have the bad days and the real rubbish days when you can't do anything, but we'll also be able to occasionally peak and have days when we do come across when we're being positive and we do come across like, oh, you're fine," sort of thing. So again, come back to the question, I don't think it's being brave. I think it's just kind of who we are and what you need to do to get through.
Yeah. Have you seen that advert? I can't remember what cream it's for, but it's for like backaches. And basically it's all about, you know, several people sort of smiling, but saying, yeah, I'm fine, they've got this backache or whatever. And I feel that that's what it's like, actually. We smile through what we're going through, don't we? That I think there's a lot behind that smile and the I'm fine bit.
What's that quote where people say you grow through what you go through?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. Good one.
Yeah, I quite like that one.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on the word brave, Mol?
Makes me feel like an imposter. I feel like when people say imposter syndrome, that's one of the first things I think of, because when it comes to brain tumours, and it's not about comparison, and we should never compare. However, that is impossible, because when someone says that to you, what do? You compare more. As brain tumours go, I've had it real easy, and to what it could be. And I think, it doesn't have the effect day to me than it does so many others. So I think, when people say that to me, like you said, Israr, it's because they don't really know what else to say. And it just, when someone calls me brave or inspirational or something, I feel like I just fold into myself. And it just feels really awkward because I don't feel those things. And you're right, that whole thing of like, I'll do this now, but I can guarantee I'll cry over something this evening, and it might be something really trivial, really ridiculous. It might be the one stop on the tube that's literally the easiest journey anyone's ever taken in their whole lives, and I just can't manage to do it, or I can't remember something, or I'm getting my words mixed up. There's so many things that where I am now, or if I'm in a volunteer setting, or like you said, in Parliament telling these stories, and it's funny and we can laugh about it, but outside it's like really upsetting, and I feel anything but brave. And then being on the oncology ward I spent so much time with, I was on a pediatric oncology ward, and so many children younger than me facing the most horrific cancer diagnoses, and you look at them and you think, well, if you're going to call anyone brave, it's them. It's not me, because I'm here crying and screaming and you're having to hold me down to put a cannula in my arm because I don't want to do it today. So it's just not feeling it. But then the other part of me is going, well, at least this person's actually talking to me, because so many family members, friends, all just disappeared. So, to them, obviously I imagine they know I'm alive, can't really escape me. But it's like, if you can do that to someone that you've been close to your whole life, then for me, it's very much, well, at least they're saying something to me. Gosh, I was so deep and so cringe. Mel.
No, I get you that, because I'm the same. If people say you look fine or aren't you brave, inside I'm going, but they're talking. They're happy to talk. They're happy to hear. And then that can often then lead to other things. You say, well, yeah, but at least you're talking, like you say, rather than people just not quite crossing the street. But most people, maybe I'm a bit old, a bit different because I'm a little bit older. Well, all right, quite a lot older. So the sort of the family and the people you have by the time you get to my stage of life kind of know me well enough that most of them have stayed with me, if that makes sense. But when you talk to people out, the neighbours and that, and they don't like, oh, I don't want to talk to him, and it's a tricky one. But so I don't think it's you being deep. I think it's just that's kind of part of the. I'm not explaining myself here, but the world we have to live in, unfortunately.
So, as I've already made it deeper than we ever could have gone, as you do, thinking of everything we do now, and I hear a lot of people talk about building a legacy. And I think I heard a lot of this around Laura Nettle. And it's something that I haven't really thought of that much. And lots of people have said to me, especially recently, like, this is the legacy you're building now. And I'm like, well, what do you mean I'm 23? And then I go, oh, wait, I got a brain tumor, got it. And there's just, that was really bad. But it's the truth, it's funny, but it's also is the truth. So first of all, I was like, why are you saying that to me? Like, that feels really weird. So I've been thinking about it a lot more, and how people maybe think of me and view me, and as, not just in our young ambassador cohort, but outside, we've we've lost young people, we've attended funerals. There's been, these experiences that we were hoping we wouldn't have to do at the age that we're at for at least another long time. But thinking of yourselves, how would you like to be remembered?
It's an interesting one. Maybe at my stage of life, it's a bit more relevant. But I often used to say to people, I want to leave a legacy, but I don't want to leave it too early. So for me, I'd like to be remembered as someone who was a nice bloke, kind, someone who cared, but also someone who looked adversity in the eye and tweaked its nose, as they say, and just carried on doing things which made my family proud and made me proud. So it is about, it's not just a because strangers I don't really care about in a nice way, but friends and family that know me, I want them to think he made a difference. He really cared. He wanted to change the world, and he wanted to make things better, and he wanted to help people, and he was actually able to do that. So that's another, I guess, another part of the reason for doing the charity stuff is not knowing, but also being aware that there is a legacy being left. So doing this sort of thing, I've personally done a couple of videos on things like radiotherapy and gamma knife that I know will be helping others and are being viewed by others. You think, well, that's cool. And I hope people look back and go, he moved the dial a bit as well, that having a brain tumor diagnosis isn't the end of your life. It doesn't mean the end of everything. If you're lucky enough to be able to still do most of what I can do physically and mentally, you can make a lot of difference out of that adversity, if that makes sense. And for me, that's how I want to be remembered, as someone, like I said, who didn't give in, who didn't kowtow, but actually got out there, was determined to make a difference, actually did things which did make a difference.
Yeah. Same with me, actually. I think I'd like to be remembered by someone who never gave up. So, I wasn't supposed to be here. I was given, I mentioned before, 7 months to live. I was not meant to walk and do all the things that I'm doing. So I think that's, really important for people to remember me by. Made a note, actually. What was it? Determination as well. So yeah, determination to heal, because I think healing has to come from you. No one else can actually do it. They can give you the medicine, but actually your own drive to wake up each morning and decide how you're going to live that day. So that determination and that hard work only comes from the individuals themselves. And they're the people who, we mentioned earlier about smiling and putting this front. So kind of, smiling even when you're in pain. It's all those things that I'd like to be remembered by. And the people who will remember me by those things are actually my nearest and dearest, because they can see me go through like the other stuff as well. Whereas I think people on your friends who don't see, what you're really going through, see different things. So yes.
Crikey, it's a big one, isn't it? And unfortunately, within this community, that is kind of something that we have to consider. And it's a big one, especially when we're in our 20s. For us ourselves, it's massive. But our final question to you guys, let's end it on a little bit more of a cheery note, linking it back to that tumour humour. If you had to write a sitcom about your brain tumour life, what would it be called?
Mine it's Are You Still Here? And the reason for that is because when I see people who haven't seen me for a while, been at a family function or something, you can almost see them looking at you thinking, and you know what they're thinking, I'm sure are you still here? And I just thought that kind of sums it up perfectly. Yes, I'm still here.
So mine has got to be something to do with the eye patch. So as I was thinking, so one eye opener maybe.
Very good.
So relate it to maybe not bumping into furniture, etc., living with an open heart. And the other one was healing, LOL. So yeah, so it's something like that, because there are so many, like it, healing is so multifaceted. We've only touched on some of the things that each of us kind of, go through each day, surviving. And I think there is actually humor behind all those little quirks, the quirky things that we do each day. So yeah, I think healing, in itself, it's quite funny.
Andy and Israr, thank you so much for joining us on the GlioBabes podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you guys on. And yeah, thank you guys for sharing your story and sharing some advice as well for our listeners. We created this podcast with the hope to create a community and a safe space for people to have these conversations. And I think you guys have done that brilliantly today. So thank you very much for being so open and honest with us.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, great to meet you. And I need to get in contact with you both, with all of you, because I want to organise a fashion event.
Yes.
As long as it doesn't involve Speedos, I'll help.
Oh, you've given us the idea now. And we'll make sure that we not just have that information when it comes out, but immediately for anyone listening to the podcast, all the support lines available will be in the show notes. Please find us on social media. On Instagram, we're at the GlioBabes. At TikTok, we're at the.GlioBabes. And we will link Andy and Israr's socials and everything for you to go and follow along their amazing work. And then when all this information is out about Israr's event and work that she's doing, we shall ensure that that is everywhere for everyone to see. And as always, of course, you can reach out to us anytime. We're here to listen. And thank you for listening to today's trial and error. But I reckon the first trial went pretty well. Well done, everyone.
Way.